Merry Christmas, everyone. For celebrating Christmas, I will be covering 12 animals that are somewhat related to Christmas in one way or another. The Odinoceptops genus is home to two species, Peruvianus and Leptodon. Though despite looking like a walrus due to its tusks, it was actually a small whale that lived during the Miocene about 7 to 3 million years ago in shallow coastal waters around what is now Peru. It had two tusks projecting towards the rear of its body, and the right tusk of a male can reach 1 meter or more in length. Being too brittle, the tusks were probably held parallel to the body. It might have been used to search for food or a sensory organ like narwhals today. Odontocyptops was the early member of the Montinidae family, which includes modern beluga and narwhals. Even though narwhals are closely related to these primitive whales, the tusks were gained by convergent evolution. It measured about 2.1 meters and weighed between 150 and 650 kilograms. Its neck articulations show that it was very flexible, being able to turn its head over 90 degrees. This, coupled with its broad snout, similar to that of a walrus, suggesting that it was a bottom feeder, searching for mollusks and sucking them out of their shells with their powerful tongue. Contrast to other toothed whales, Odontoceptus does not possess elongated rostrum. The dorsal-facing orbits indicating the possibility of dorsal binocular vision, which could compensate for the lack of a melon that is used for echolocation for most toothed whales. Strong muscle scars in their skulls suggesting the presence of powerful upper lip. Visual and the echolocation system of the two species Odontoceptops differed. They went extinct likely due to a combination of environmental changes and competition for resources.
The Irish elk, or Megaloceros, is a misnomer because it was not exclusive to Ireland, nor was it an elk. It is a giant extinct deer, the largest deer species ever. It stood up to 7 feet at the shoulder, or 2.1 meters, with antlers spanning up to 3.65 meters or 12 feet. The Irish elk evolved during the glacial period of the last million years during the Pleistocene epoch. It ranged through Europe, North Asia, and northern Africa, and there is evidence of them in China. The name Irish has stuck because excellent, well-preserved fossils of the giant deer are especially common in the lake sediments of peat bogs in Ireland. The giant deer is great significance to paleontologists because of the way in which the animal has become involved in evolutionary debates down through the years. In the 17th and 18th centuries, it was becoming increasingly apparent that the fossils represented organisms that were not known to survive anywhere on Earth. But to scientists who believed in the divine creation of the Earth and its life, this posed a jarring philosophical problem. Why would a good, perfect God allow any of his animals in his creation to die out completely? Many scientists denied the reality of extinction and instead suggested that animals known only as fossils would one day be found alive in some unexplored part of the globe. Mornix erroneously identified the Irish elk with the American moose, while others thought the Irish elk was identical with the European reindeer. Not until 1812 did the great French scientist Georges Cuvier document the Irish elk, along with other fossil vertebrates such as the mammoth, did not belong to any living species of mammal. Cuvier's study of the Irish elk was a key part of the documentation that extinction had happened in the past. A once popular hypothesis evolutionary mechanism, orthogenesis, in which change in an organism was due to natural selection but to internal direction trends with a lineage. The Irish elk was once considered a prime example of orthogenesis. It was thought that the lineage had started evolving on an irreversible trajectory towards larger and larger antlers. The Irish elk finally went extinct when the antlers became so large that the animal could no longer hold up their heads or got entangled in the trees. Although orthogenesis was a common evolutionary theory in the 19th and early 20th century, it has since been abandoned for lack of plausible mechanisms. It is perfectly possible, however, to reconcile that the huge antlers of Megaloceros with evolution by selection. Some paleontologists suggest the enormous weaponry of the Irish elk served as a defensive purpose to kill predators and fight off rivals for mates. And more modern interpretation of its function of the antlers in giant deer suggests that they were used for sexual display, as they are in living deers. Some living deers use their antlers in ritualized combat at mating time, in which few individuals actually get hurt. It is possible that the Irish elk used its antlers in such a way. Whichever the case, sexual selection is most likely the explanation for why, through genetic analysis, have found that the closest living relative of the giant deer is the fowl deer. Both species might have found a mate in similar ways. During the mating season, the males of the fowl deer from what is called a lek is an area where females gather and males compete by roaring, parading side by side, and fighting by locking antlers and pushing and twisting each other. In this display, the strength of the bigger antlers were probably more intimidating to the other males and more desirable to the females, who would wander into the lek to choose their mate. Large and stronger the antlers, the more successful in mating the male deer would be, and the more offspring they would have as a result. Offspring which could inherit the parental genes for large antlers. Males of the species would have had to be built to carry heavy antlers. We know from looking at their fossils that the top of their skulls was extra thick and that they had very sturdy neck vertebrae. Fossils also indicate that the vertebrae in the shoulder regions were elongating, suggesting that males had a hump on their backs with muscles that might be held to carry the weight of huge antlers. As a result, they preferred to roam in parkland, a mixture of open woods and grasslands. The first wave of extinction for the giant deer was around 12,000 years ago, when it disappeared from Ireland, Britain, and most of Europe. During this time, at the end of the Ice Age, the climate became very cold and severe, and food for the deer would have been very scarce. But this period wasn't the end of the story. For the giant deer, after carbon dating a fossil bone collected from central Russia, there was one remaining enclave there until 8,000 years ago.
Polar bears or grizzly bears are hybrids of grizzly and polar bears, are often referred to as polar bear or grizzly bears depending on the parental lineage. Polar bears is when a father is a grizzly bear, and a grizzly bear is when the father is a polar bear. The first confirmed hybrid in the wild was discovered in 2006 along the Beaufort Sea in the Northwest Territories. Over the following 8 years, 7 more hybrid bears have been identified in the wild. A somewhat humorous twist, genetic testing revealed that all of the hybrid bears share the same mother, polar bear, who mated with grizzly bear fathers. Although these were the first confirmed hybrids in the wild, researchers have speculated about their existence since hybrid bear cubs had previously been bred in zoos such as the Onsibruck Zoo in Germany in 2004. Typically, hybrids are sterile and are incapable of producing offspring of their own. However, polar bears and grizzly bear hybrids are in fact fertile, which suggests a relatively recent split between the two species in an evolutionary time span. In fact, genetic analysis has shown that these two species hybridized during the Pleistocene, the geographic epoch that lasted from 2.58 million to 11,700 years ago. During this time period, they were repeated glacial cycles, which impacted species habitat and the range as the ice advanced and retreated. These glacial cycles would have forced polar bears and grizzlies into closer proximity and likely led to interspecies breeding. In June 13, 2024, researchers from the Environment and Climate Change of Canada, Polar Bear International, University of Manitoba, MacEward University, Government of Northwest Territories, and San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance. This is the first ever large-scale analysis of how often hybrids of polar bears and grizzly bears exist in the wild, made possible by developing an innovation SNP genetic sequencing chip, which is a new tool to analyze samples of polar bear and grizzly bears. This report analyzed 371 historic polar bear and 440 historic grizzly bear samples from across Canada, Alaska, and Greenland, and confirmed that only the 8 already known are hybrids, thus underscoring the rarity of hybridization. The rate of hybridization is increasing but rare. This report answers the question of how many polar grizzly bear hybrids are there, which responds to the expectation collected between 1975 and 2015, with the warming temperatures causing the range of polar bears and grizzly bears to overlap. They were surprised to find no new cases of polar grizzly hybrids despite speculation of increasing numbers. Hybrids have a mix of polar bear and grizzly bear characteristics, so the question could be raised, are they better at surviving compared to the parent species? Unfortunately, this is not the case. Polar bears evolved over 10,000 years to thrive in one of the harshest environments on our planet. Since polar bears are not well adapted to life as a polar bear nor a grizzly bear, given that hybrids are poorly adapted to their environment, they are unlikely to pose a threat to the polar bear populations. Bronchus giganteus, also known as Christmas tree worms, the common name of these worms is derived from their appearance. This little creature also goes by a few different names like spiral tube worm, Xmas tree worm, Christmas worm, and giant tube worm. Each worm has 2 brightly colored crowns that protrude from their tube-like body. These Christmas tree-like crowns are composed of radioles or hair-like appendages radiating from the worm's central spine. These appendages are used for respiration and to catch dinner, which typically consists of microscopic plants or plankton floating in the water. The life cycle of a Christmas tree worm begins in the open ocean. Males and females release their sperm and eggs into the water, letting the currents carry them, relying on external fertilization and trusting the ocean to do the matchmaking. Once the eggs are fertilized, the larvae drift through the water column until they find a suitable coral to settle on, where they transition from free swimming larvae to their festive adult forms, where they construct protective tubes from calcium carbonate. In fact, while the colorful crowns of these worms are visible, most of their bodies are anchored in burrows that they bore into live coral. They straddle Christmas tree worms, rapidly react with their burrows to protect themselves from grazing predators like fish, crustaceans. Tree worms come in a variety of bright colors. Some Christmas tree worms boast bold, solid colors like vibrant reds, yellows, and oranges, while others feature indicated patterns that contrasting stripes and specks of white along with the edges of their spirals, like tiny lights twinkling in the festive tree. Christmas tree worms thrive in tropical and subtropical waters, primarily in shallow coral reefs. They are the most abundant in regions like the Caribbean and Indo-Pacific, including locations such as Indonesia, Australia, and French Polynesia. These types most favored by Christmas tree worms are boulder corals, priority, and brain corals. Though they aren't very big, averaging about 3.8 centimeters in length. However, because of their distinctive appearance, beauty, and color, these worms are easily spotted. They are some of the most widely recognized polychaetes. These colorful creatures, much more than just a reef decoration, they also play a vital role in the reef ecosystem. Worms offer protection to these hosts against predators like sea stars, prevent harmful algae overgrow. They prevent invasive species from smothering corals. Additionally, their burrowing behavior, while seemingly minor, also plays a vital role in creating microhabitats in coral reefs for other tiny marine organisms in return for their shelter. Another extraordinary fact about the Christmas tree worms is that they have the remarkable ability to self-repair damage to both their plumes and protective tubes. This helps them have surprisingly long lives, with the typical lifespan ranging from 10 to 30 years. Longevity closely depends on the health of their coral's host, and if the coral survives, then the Christmas tree worm will also thrive. While not currently considered endangered, Christmas tree worms face a variety of threats from coral reef degradation, climate change, and ocean acidification. Damage to coral reefs directly impact their habitats and survival. Conservation efforts focus on protecting and restoring coral reef habitats. This includes establishing marine protected area, MPAs, reducing carbon emissions to mitigate climate change, will in turn allow the Christmas tree worm to continue to thrive into the future. Christmas Island's most famous crustaceans are extremely important for forest ecosystem. Best known for their spectacular annual migration, red crabs actually spend most of the year in one place. The majority of the island's more than 100 million red crabs live in moist rainforests, but they can be found in other habitats including shore, terraces, and even domestic gardens. Red crabs dig burrows or live in deep rock crevices. They are sensitive to a lack of moisture and rarely leave their burrows during the dry season, plunging their entrance with a wade of leaves. They mostly eat fallen leaves, fruits, flowers, and seeds. However, they are not strictly vegetarian and will also eat other dead crabs, birds, and the introduced giant African snail. Red crabs contribute to rainforest health by selectively consuming plants, cleaning up leaf litter, turning over the soil, and fertilizing it with their droppings. They are a big crab with an adult body shell or carapace measuring up to 116 millimeters across. The carapace is roughly shoulder and enclose their lungs and gills. Males are larger than females, but females have a much broader abdomen and usually have smaller claws than males. Every year, millions of these large crabs emerge from the forest and make their way to the ocean to breed, swarming across roads, streams, rocks, and beaches. The migration starts with the first rainfall of the wet season. This is usually in October or November, but can sometimes be as late as December or January. Red crabs all over the island leave their homes at the same time and start marching towards the ocean to mate and spawn. Male crabs lead the migration and are joined by the females along the way. The exact timing and speed of the migration is determined by the phase of the moon. Red crabs always spawn before dawn on a reducing high tide during the last quarter of the moon. Incredibly, they know exactly when to leave their burrows to make their lunar date. However, because crabs wait until the first rainfall to start their trek, they sometimes have a hurry if the rain arrives close to optimal spawning date. They will move rapidly, but if the rain comes early, they may take their time, stopping to eat and drink on their way to the coast. If it begins raining too late to make the spawning date, some crabs will stay in their burrows and migrate the following month instead. Larger male crabs usually arrive at the sea first, but they are soon outnumbered by females. After their journey from the plateau, the crabs take a dip into the sea to replenish moisture. Next, the male crabs dig burrows. The huge number of crabs mean burrows are very close together, and males will often fight each other for possession of a burrow. The female crabs then join the males on treks to mate or near the burrows. After mating, male crabs have a second dip in the sea before starting their journey back home. The female crabs stays behind in the moist burrows. They produce eggs within 3 days and will remain in the burrow for about another 2 weeks as the eggs develop. Each female crab can produce up to 100,000 eggs, which she holds in her brood pouch, before returning to the forest. Spawning may occur on 5 to 6 consecutive nights during migration. Red crab larvae hatch from eggs as soon as they make contact with the water. Clouds of the larvae swirl near the shore before being taken out to sea by waves and the receding tide. They grow through several larval stages over the next month, eventually developing into prawn-like animals called megalopia. The megalopia gather in pools close to the shore for 1 or 2 days until they become fully formed baby crabs and emerge from the water. Measuring about 5 millimeters across, the tiny crabs begin marching inland, taking around 9 days to reach the safety of the plateau. There they will stay hidden in rocky outcrops and forest debris for the first 3 years of their life. However, the vast majority of larvae never make it out of the water. Instead, they are eaten by fish, manta rays, and enormous whale sharks that visit Christmas Island to take advantage of the annual feast. Most years, no or very few baby crabs will emerge from the sea at all, but once or twice a decade, a huge number will survive, which is enough to maintain the island's large red crab population. The red crab migration is Christmas Island's biggest tourist attraction, drawing nature lovers from all over the world. The easiest place to watch the migration and spawning are Drumsite, Flying Fish Cove, Ethereal Beach, and Greta Beach. To protect the red crabs, some sections of the road may close for part or all of the day during the peak migration time, often at short notice. In addition, structures such as crab bridges built over the roads. Invasive species that have been introduced to Christmas Island have had a profound impact on the local ecosystem. Their presence can lead to fundamental changes in biodiversity of a given ecosystem, as well as the extinction of native species. In particular, due to the presence of vast arrays of supercolonies containing Yellow crazy ants. Despite the invasion of the yellow crazy ant, the crab status remains least concern. Zealandia, an area of the Earth's crust containing New Zealand and New Caledonia, was once a hotspot of penguin life. Many of the earliest known species have been found in this region, with scientists believing that this is where penguins first evolved around 62 million years ago. Penguins are first thought to have evolved from their closest relatives, the petrels, but they only appear around 33 million years after penguins evolved. Like some modern species of petrels, the ancestors of penguins are thought to have been divers that swam in the open ocean using their feet and their wings to help propel them underwater. Over time, the birds became more adapted for an aquatic lifestyle as their wings became flippers and adapted to gliding through the water. Eventually, the birds lost their ability to fly altogether. This would have allowed early penguins to become much bigger as they no longer had to support their own weight to take off. Being large would have been helpful as it reduced the amount of energy needed to dive, but it also had a number of other advantages. A bigger penguin could capture large prey, and more importantly, it would have been able to conserve body temperature in colder waters. It is possible that breaking the 45 kilogram size barrier allowed the earliest penguins to spread from New Zealand to other parts of the world, with a large variety of large species found throughout the Paleogene epoch that was 66 to 23 million years ago. At an estimated 150 kilograms, Kiwi.Animals.Elevator.Pitches would have been 3 times heavier than any living penguin, while Kiwi.Animals.Elevator.Pitches would have been a graceful giant and swum through the oceans. Alan Tennyson from the Museum of New Zealand, Te Patogoia, discovered the fossil in 57-million-year-old beach boulders in North Ontoga on New Zealand's South Island between 2016 and 2017. He named the new species Kiwi.Animals.Elevator.Pitches in honor of Dr. R. Edward Fordence, professor emeritus at the University of Ontario, marking their existence as roughly 5 to 10 million years after the end of the Cretaceous extinction, which led to the extinction of non-avian dinosaurs. Together, these birds would have been an important part of the marine ecosystem, recovering from the mass extinction. While it is uncertain how tall the species was, the height of a closely related species, Kiwi.Animals.Elevator.Pitches, has been estimated at 1.77 meters. The measurements, however, are all open to debate. Many fossil penguins are only known from preserved arm and leg bones rather than complete skeletons. This means the scientists have to estimate how big they were based on the relationship between bone size and overall size. As a result, it is possible that the estimated size of these penguins could have changed as new fossils are discovered. Giant penguins appear to have been thriving. They are known to have reached as far as Antarctica and Peru as they spread across the Earth. Around 20 million years ago, however, they vanished from the fossil record. While it is not entirely certain what led to their demise, the arrival of new predators might be the blame. The disappearance of large penguins is around the same time that seals were spreading throughout the southern hemisphere. We don't know exactly when the first seal arrived or the last giant penguin does, but it is plausible that competition with pinnipeds would have wiped out the largest penguin. This could have been due to a combination of direct predator predation pressure along with competition for prey and seals monopolizing nesting areas. Smaller penguins, meanwhile, were less affected by these new arrivals and would give rise to the ancestors of modern species around 14 million years ago. The 30th of March 1990, researchers found an unusual skull in Didski Bay in Greenland. How speculations of Narluga hybrids have persisted over time, but it wasn't until 2019 when DNA analysis of the skull confirmed their elusive existence. However, it is not the first time humans observed Narlugas. Inuit hunters have known about them for a while. Narlugas, according to Inuit hunters, look like a mix of both narwhal and beluga skulls. They have a narwhal tail, beluga pectoral fins, and a gray body coloration. From DNA analysis, confirmed that the mating between female narwhal and male beluga produce a Narluga. This skull is the first evidence of a hybrid Narluga specimen. It is housed in the Natural History Museum of Denmark in Copenhagen. Hybrids usually show a dominant phenotype of one of their parental species, meaning the appearance is more similar to their dad or mom. 3D cranial models of beluga and narwhal and Narluga. The skull of a beluga is very different from the skull of a narwhal. Both species have elongated skulls, yet narwhals show a short and robust beak, a rostrum, compared to belugas. Belugas have teeth while narwhals have tusks. Male narwhals have one, in some rare cases two, tusks protruding from their left side of the skull. Females don't usually have tusks. Narlugas has a wide and longer beak than a beluga and several horizontal teeth, similar to tusks in narwhals. Scientists analyzed the chemical compositions of the Narluga's teeth. They found that the diet was different from its parents. Beluga and narwhals dive to catch fish and squid, while the Narluga's diet is considered to be bottom feeder. The Narluga must have used its teeth for scraping the ocean floor to catch prey. The hybrids develop their feeding techniques different from their parent species. Cetaceans, for the most part, have the same number of chromosomes. Most cetaceans have 44 chromosomes in every cell, and only 7 species have 42 chromosomes. This is one of the reasons why they tend to have more hybridization cases than other mammals. Scientists have recorded 57 cases of hybridization in whales and dolphins. Belugas and narwhals live in the Arctic, meaning their habitats overlap, especially during the winter migrations towards Didski Bay in West Greenland. The dramatic change in sea ice due to climate change might help interbreeding between the two species because they live close to each other. It is also shown in aerial surveys that Didski Bay is the only right exchange area known by scientists for narwhals and belugas at the moment. It could explain why we find the skull in Didski Bay. It is still unknown if the Narluga is fertile, though the Narluga from the skull scientists found is a first-generation hybrid, and we know that it is an adult from the degree of fashion of its bones in the beak. What we do not know is if it was fertile or not. Since 2016, scientists have been tracking a pod of beluga whales that seem to have adopted a lone male narwhal in Canada's St. Lawrence River. The narwhal was first spotted after scientists at the Group Research and Education of Marine Mammals, GREMM, used a drone to study social behaviors of beluga whales. Since joining the beluga pod, the narwhal has made itself home and appears to be fitting in. Its behaviors like it was one of the boys. Behavior ecologist Erica Sirakias tells Newsweekly that the narwhal may have joined the pod for protection against predators or because the two species are social creatures. At about 12 years old, the narwhal is reaching sexual maturity, and experts are watching to see if the lone male will mate with one of its beluga peers to produce a hybrid known as a Narluga. The species Cryolophosaurus ellioti is named after David Elliott, the person who made the initial discovery of Cryolophosaurus. Before its current name was widely known as Cryolophosaurus, it also referred by its nickname Elvosaurus because of its crest similar to the predominant pompadour haircut that was made famous by Elvis Presley. They were first found in Mount Kirkpatrick in Beardmouth Glacier area in the Trans-Antarctic Mountains in the 1990s. Many of the early Jurassic theropods had display features on top of their skulls, with some including Dilophosaurus that had two double crests and Ceratosaurus that had horns. Cryolophosaurus, however, had a forward-facing fan-shaped structure that rose up from the top of its skull just in front of its eyes. Also, the crest is frowed, giving it the appearance of several ridges rising up vertically rather than a smooth surface. The only credible function for this growth is that it was a display feature that allowed Cryolophosaurus to recognize other members of its species, as well as possibly to attract mates.
For this purpose,
The crest may have actually been colored differently from the rest of its body, with coloration becoming more vivid during the breeding season. Additionally, since the holotype material is thought to possibly represent a subadult, it's possible that the crest may have been slightly larger in a full-grown adult. The skeleton of Cryolophosaurus bears both advanced and basal characteristics of theropods, making its position within the theropod phylogenetic tree controversial. It is unusual anatomic features, size, and habitat located close to the Jurassic polar circle, all different from other early Jurassic theropods. The skull structure of Cryolophosaurus suggests that it may have been one of the first tetraterian stiff-tailed theropods, which was implied a relationship with others such as Yangchuanosaurus and Sinoraptor. A later study, however, by P. Carley, N. D. Smith, and W. R. Hammer has since found Cryolophosaurus to be more similar to Dilophosaurus and Decovinator, although Cryolophosaurus was still considered a basal tetraterian. Today, Antarctica can be described as a frozen wasteland, but back in Jurassic, it actually had an extensive covering of forest, something which is confirmed by the presence of fossilized tree trunks found near the remains of Cryolophosaurus. Antarctica was more temperate along the coastlines during the Jurassic. The interior may have still been too cold to become colonized by dinosaurs. This can be explained with Jurassic oceans being warmer so that offshore air currents passing over them would pick up their warmth, raising the ambient temperature for possibly many kilometers inland, so that these parts of Antarctica would have been more tolerable for permanent habitation. This can be seen in modern Western Europe, in fact. This dinosaur reached lengths of 8 meters and weighed 500 kilograms. It was a carnivore with many sharp and pointed teeth. It may have preyed upon basal sauropodomorphs like Glaciosaurus, which is also known from the Hansen Formation. Cryolophosaurus lived in the early Jurassic 170 million years ago in Antarctica. Cryolophosaurus was one of the earliest meat-eating dinosaurs found so far. Although the fossils are rare, currently recognized material suggests that the taxon was the largest predator in the early Jurassic times in Antarctica, indicating that it was the apex predator of its ecosystem. Not many dinosaurs are known from Antarctica due to cold temperatures of Antarctica. Overall, the number of fossil specimens of this animal are sparse due to the rugged terrain of Antarctica that makes excavation difficult. Antherasplia, or commonly called the cave lion or steppe lion, is a species or subspecies of Felinidae and belongs to the genus Panthera, which includes most of the extant big cats. The late Pleistocene subspecies is known from sites ranging from Western Europe to Alaska, which was connected to Siberia via the land bridge. Latitudinally, the species seems to have ranged as far north as Eurasian glaciers allowed. Its southern distribution is less clear. Finds support a presence in the Cantabrian Mountains and Alps, along with a few sites in the Italian peninsula and a single site in northern Greece. Scientific study of the cave lion dates back some 250 years to this moment, when George August Goldfold described Philosplia from the famous Zulithan cave in 1810. There are 3 subspecies recognized based on morphology and earliest specimen dating to the Middle Pliocene and assigned the subspecies Pantherasplia fossilis. The late Middle Pliocene specimens assigned to a recently described Pantherasplia intermedia. Late Pliocene populations have been assigned the Pantherasplia. There is an additional subspecies. Pantherasplia ventrigini is sometimes recognized as a unique Beringian population. This split is based off of genetic evidence indicating the two as belonging to distinct haplogroups. DNA discoveries have shown that cave lions are most closely related to another extinct lion called the American lion that's separated by about 340,000 years ago. Amongst extant species, the modern lion is the closest relative according to both morphological and genetic analysis. The divergence date is still up in the air, suggesting either a late split about 475,000 to 550,000 years ago, or an early split around 1.85 to 1.89 million years ago. The huge difference hinges on the inclusion of Pantherasplia fossilis into the collaboration of molecular clocks. As a result of there is no consensus on whether the cave lion should be treated as a separate species or a subspecies of Panthera leo. The earliest remains of this creature date to about 800,000 to 12,000 years ago in western Siberia and are usually assigned to fossilis, though not without controversy. A more definitive earliest set of fossils can be dated to various locations in Europe around 700,000 years ago by intermedia is dated to 150 to 350,000 years ago. Pantherasplia appears in the fossil record around 180 to 200,000 years ago. The exact size of the late Pliocene cave lion is not been studied in detail. Shuriel in 2016 provides an estimate on the maximum known body size of the species at 339 kilograms, and Martiz et al. 2021 suggests 400 kilograms for a large male, but a reliable average is lacking in literature. Late Pliocene specimens are considerably smaller than early subspecies. Additionally, the species falls into 2 different size classes. These are widely interpreted as being due to sexual dimorphism, with males considerably larger than females. Supporting the evidence of this hypothesis is the cave paintings displaying a male as indicated by the scrotum, besides a much smaller female. The skeletal structure of cave lions are highly resemble that of other members of Panthera, especially the modern lion. The most notable morphological difference between the two is the difference in limb structure. Cave lions are relatively short-limbed. This stark in contrast to savanna-adapted modern lions and lions of the American steppe, which have the longest limbs of any Pleistocene pantherans. The cave lions appear to have been a temperate and polar taxon. An adaptation to cold climate niche, the cave lions possess a thick, compact undercoat. Cave lions hunted in prides, at least on occasion. Clear evidence of this is a cave painting depicting a pride of 8 lions observing a herd of bison. It is unclear if these prides were a universal behavior. Male cave lions lack manes as evidence of a painting at Chavet Cave. This has been suggested to indicate a solitary lifestyle. If they exhibited cooperative hunting, cave lions were probably capable of taking down bigger prey than any of the contemporary predators within its range. A study by Van Velkenberg 2016 estimated the max prey size of a cave lion pride would have reached 6,700 kilograms, which which would have precluded only the straight-tusked elephant, Paleolaxodon anquis, and possibly adult male woolly mammoths. The typical prey range of the cave lion pride more likely falls between 200 and 900 kilograms. In Western and Central Europe, cave lions appear to have fed primarily on reindeer and muskoxen. These are both relatively small species for whole prides of giant lions. This could be considered evidence of a solitary hunting lifestyle. The diet was, however, highly variable, more so than any other predator in the region. Other common megafauna include the wild horse, large bovines, probably aurochs, and members of the bison species and other cervids, notably Irish elk. The cave bear, woolly mammoth, and woolly rhinoceros also appear to have been part of their diet in these cases. The lions had antagonistic relationship with other species certainly exists, most notably the cave hyena would come into conflict with the cave lion, probably over carcasses, much like their African equivalents. Push cave hyenas would cave lions away from their generalist niche, as lions rely much more heavily on reindeer and cave bears in their presence. The last repeatedly dated fossil in Europe is around 14,000 to 500,000 years ago, and connected with the extinction of the most cold-adapted European megafauna. The disappearance of the cave lion from Siberia is connected to its extinction in Europe. Alaska appears to have been the last holdout of the species, with the youngest fossils dated of the species at 13,200 years ago. Climate change in the Pacific Ocean had an impact on ancient walruses, that the rise of water temperature helped to boost nutrients and planktonic life. This is about 10 million years ago and may have contributed to their diversity. Tillis is an extinct genus of large pinniped closely related to modern-day walruses, which contains three species: Magnus, the largest one and the first one to be discovered, named Pontilus koani in honor of Nakoni Koa, a fossil walrus researcher from Japan. Pontilus borani was found in Aliso Viejo near the 73 toll road. It is named after John Barron, a retired researcher from the U.S. Geographical Survey. The genus lived around between 11 to 5 million years ago. They lived during the Miocene and Pleistocene. The skull of Pontilus is 60 centimeters or 24 inches, surpassing skulls of any other prehistoric pinniped, and twice as big as the skulls of modern male walruses. Like many other extinct walrus species, its upper canines did not develop into long tusks like those in modern walruses. Pontilus reached more than 4 meters or 13 feet in body length, rivaling the extant southern elephant seal, not only the largest pinniped of all time, but also the largest carnivoran of all time, weighing estimated 2,000 to 4,000 kilograms. An adult would have nothing to fear on land, but in the sea it would have had watch out for Megalodon. The diet of Pontilus has been a subject of debate. Traditionally believed to have hunted mainly large mammalian prey like seals, smaller odentines, and possibly even small whales. It is nowadays thought the killer walrus image may be a bit wrong, and that it still hunted mainly fish and squid. That's not to say it was entirely safe for other marine mammals, considering the stellar sea lions are known to hunt seals and sea otters. And even the leopard seal eats mainly krill, so the Pontilus could probably opportunistically hunt mammals. The genus was found in formerly marine and coastal areas in what is now California and Oregon, with a lot of these fossils being discovered in my hometown of Orange County. The exact cause of the Tillis genus is not exactly clear, but it was likely due to competition and climate change, and competition potentially coming in the form of ancestors of modern pinnipeds such as seals and sea lions. Dozens of medium-sized three-toed theropod tracks have been found in Denali. The larger of these tracks were attributed to an unnamed small relative of Tyrannosaurus rex, who was none other than a creature that was discovered in 2006 at the Karakati-Teguasi Quarry in the north of Alaska. Fossils were found of a early medium-sized theropod with an estimated skull length of 60 to 7 millimeters or 24 to 28 inches. These were the first referred to as Gorgosaurus and later to Albertosaurus. After preparation in the Perton Museum of Natural Sciences, it was recognized these represented a new species to science. The holotype has been found in a layer of the Prince Creek Formation dated to about 69.1 million years ago. It is only known from two specimens, a partial skull roof found in Alaska and a partial snout also found in the Prince Creek Formation in 1995. The Nanukosaurus was first described and named by Anthony R. Filreau and Ronald S. Tysky in 2014. The type species is Nanukosaurus haligoni. The generic name is derived from the Nanupic word for polar bear. This dinosaur may have only grew to about 6 meters or 19.7 feet long, which was half the size of an average Tyrannosaurus, promoting the nickname polar pygmy. Since its discovery, there has been various undescribed material assigned to Nanukosaurus, giving evidence that they reach larger sizes. It has been proposed that the holotype was from a juvenile Nanukosaurus and an adult specimen would have reached 9 meters in length, similar to other Tyrannosaurids. Nanukosaurus bears a particular shaped ridge on its head, indicating that the carnivore was closely Tyrannosaurus rex than those in Albertosauridae. The length of the reconstructed skull, based on the proportions of related animals, is 60 to 70 centimeters or 24 to 28 inches. Being top predator in the region meant many other dinosaurs could have been on the menu. However, if prey species migrated seasonally, Nanukosaurus may have had plenty of meat during the summer and been left searching for food in the winter. Just like its famous cousin, Nanukosaurus was likely went extinct due to the KGB mass extinction event that was caused likely by an asteroid.